Okay, I'm looking for him.
Okay.
Got to say hello, David.
Where's David?
He's down in the corner. I see him.
Hey, everybody. Good evening.
Hi, David. How are you?
Good, good. How you doing, Diane? How you doing?
Well,
Paul?
good. Well, good. Hi, Kevin. Didn't see you either.
Yeah, he's down there.
Hey, Kevin.
Rock and roll.
That's right. Ready to go.
2-1.
Just waiting to see if I can see Jay pop into the waiting room here.
Let me see. Yeah, he sent me a text just a minute ago. They must have been just at 6, entering now, he says.
So again, if you can, you might want everyone mute themselves except for Jim.
Yes, let's do that.
And we'll be able to get that going. Because when you have background noise, your screens will switch to you and you may not realize it.
People can have background noise too that's troublesome.
So here comes Jay.
Okay,
Let me get him in.
I'm muting.
So good evening, Jay.
So I can hear, not hear the sound.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm back.
Good evening, Mr. President.
Good evening. Sorry for my 1 minute jump in the last minute moment. Glad to make my way from one Zoom meeting to the next.
So Jim Pashek is a co-host and will, after you introduce him, after I let people in, have the floor and he'll share his screen and then go through the PowerPoint. And then near the end of the time, 6:45 or something, Jim will kind of turn it back over to you, Mr. President. So everybody should just basically be in mute mode. And then you and I, or you can unmute yourself as you get into that time, get close. That way Jim can, share his screen and run anything. Do you have any questions, Jay?
I always have questions, but does it really matter? That's
So I've got about 42 people in, and I've got a couple people in the waiting room who are unidentified. They're just iPhones. There is a message in the waiting room, if people take time to read it, that says identify yourself.
So what I would suggest right away is letting people in kind of not as a mass let-in. People that you can't identify, leave them in the waiting room. So just click everybody in, leave the people who are unidentified and ask them to identify themselves in order to enter.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do that through a message, but we're going to get going here. Okay, so I'm going to begin to admit people. You'll see the screen start to populate with people.
Alex, if you want to make me a co-host, I can help you with messaging people while you're doing that.
Yeah, I can do that. I don't see how to do that, so maybe you can teach me, because right now I don't see how to make those folks, how to get, I can see remove and I can see admit.
Everybody kind of load in. Just give it a quick second while everyone kind of loads in real fast. One more second, Now I'm going to just start.
Let's share a few thoughts on what we want to get. I also build up that business.
Everybody's muted as you're coming.
And what business would that be? Oh, come on. If she goes to jail for the incident, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Alex. I think we're pretty loaded. Give it a couple more seconds. Is everybody in yet, Alex? We got a few more. You're muted, Alex, so I can't hear you. Can't hear a word you're saying as you're muted. Alex,
Yes,
I was asking if everybody's pretty loaded in.
still working through it.
I
A
understand.
lot of people have unidentified themselves, so they're going to sit in the waiting room for a while because I can't tell.
I understand. Outside of those unidentified, which given the previous kind of Zoom bombing, there won't be kind of quick and easy access. So it may take an extra second to get everybody in. That being the case, I don't think anybody's in the mood for that again. If we can avoid it, we'll take the steps to do so. So as we wait a couple seconds, I'll simply kind of welcome everybody to our special meeting with regard to the C-1 planning and visioning. I'm not going to be doing, obviously, the speaking today. Jim Pashek will be speaking on the work that's been done. And then this is primarily, it's informational for all of us. I will see if council has any particular questions as to the presentation as well. With that being said, I know that they're still loading people in, but I also know that it is a Monday, that of a Monday Night Football kind of Monday. And so while I'm a Lions fan, and if anybody saw, we lost in the way that we do every year, I will turn this over to Jim, who I see has a Steelers jersey on and is used to winning. So take it away, sir.
Thank you, Jay. As Jay said, my name is Jim Pashek from Pashek MTR. We're a planning firm here in Pittsburgh, and very pleased to be able to present to you the information that we have here as part of the visioning plan that we developed over the last 6 months or so for Churchill Borough. I have about 25 slides. I figure it'll take about 25 minutes to go through those and then open it up for council if you have any questions. So the work that we did in this report that was submitted covered about 3 months of very busy activity from April into June. We developed a strategy for doing this back in the fall of 2019. And of course, COVID came in and kind of threw everything into a mess in April when we were ready to get started. And so we quickly shifted gears and went digital and did all of our work remotely. I think most people would say fairly successfully in terms of engaging people through this process. I don't know if any of you had a chance to review that report, but I hope you would agree that for those that had, that an awful lot of work has been done in that short period of time. I'd like to mention that this project was funded by DCD and the borough. DCD provided a grant to the borough, and the borough provided the rest of the funding for this project. We're appreciative to DCD for that funding. Before I get started with the actual slides, though, I'd like to say a special thanks to Diane Law. She was our council contact for this project, and she provided lots of guidance and persevered, and when the planners got stubborn, she hung in there. So Diane, thank you very much. for sticking with us on this. And I'd also like to mention, because Kevin Collins and the mayor were on our steering committee and they were terrific. So I appreciate that very much. I'd like to just mention that as well. So in terms of what the goals for the project, I need to go back and talk a little bit about why we did this project. And it was to continue the discussion that we had as part of the multi-municipal comprehensive plan with Churchill, Monroeville, and Wilkins. And as part of that plan, we discussed what to do with large sites that needed to be redeveloped. And so one of the goals of this plan was to kind of continue this. This was the next step in trying to articulate a vision for one of those very large sites that was underutilized, the one in the old Westinghouse site. One of the other goals was that we really wanted to create a great public engagement, and Diane kept saying that, got to get the public involved, got to get the public involved, and thank you for pushing on that, Diane. So we tried to work a public process that wasn't reliant on any one thing. So we didn't just rely on a public meeting or just interviews, but we kind of layered in together, kind of like weaving a tapestry of interviews and public meetings and webinars and steering committee and questionnaire results. And so we kind of wove all that together to try and give us some sense of what kind of trends people saw going on and what their aspirations and hopes and concerns were about development on the C1 zoning district. And I guess the third goal would be that from the public input and the information generated from our expert panel discussions, that we ought to suggest some kind of development objectives that would help lead to changes in the zoning ordinance. That's kind of an interim period. You have a vision, you develop development objectives, and then it's fairly easy then to take those development objectives and start to work out ways you can make the zoning ordinances match with the vision that you've created. And so the third goal, I think, of this planning process was to create those development objectives. So this shot is of the top of one of the pages actually within the comprehensive plan, where we talked about the problem and the vision for these large, either empty or underutilized properties in all three municipalities. We had these large sites and they were struggling, their conditions were challenging. And we created a vision in this comprehensive plan for all of these sites, for all three municipalities, to encourage redevelopment that is beneficial to both the developer and the community. We felt that as part of this planning process that needed to be a collaborative approach in order to get things done. So the next few slides are some maps and drawings that we produced as part of this report, and I'd like to show those to you to give you some context for what we were looking at. And the first one was is the zoning map. Some of you may be familiar with. If you kind of see this big ribbon, a line that my cursor is going along, that's the parkway. And this C1 is this light blue area abutting the parkway. And that's the area that we're looking at in terms of this visioning process. It's quite a large area. There are other commercial areas. There's a C2 district to the north up in this area. And there are two small parcels of C2 district here and further on the border with Wilkins as well. But this is the much larger area of commercial development that's been allowed as part of the zoning ordinance. And you can see the patterns of residential development around the old Westinghouse site. So here's another map that I think might be a little bit easier to orient yourself with. It's an area, kind of an aerial GIS mapping. Again, here's the parkway that runs its way through, going that way to Monroeville. Here's Beulah Road coming down through the center of the borough, with, anchored by Beulah Presbyterian Church up here. The borough building is right in this little wedged area right here. If you can see the purple outline, this is the outline of the C1 district that wraps around here. And I have another drawing that shows the acreage and those kind of things. So these white things are the buildings from the old Westinghouse site. Next door is Pace School and the junior senior high school. We've got Marbury residential neighborhood in this area. We've got the cemetery and St. John Francis Catholic Church down in the brown. These are the brown areas right here. We have Garden Terrace and Stratford neighborhoods on the south end of this C1 district. Here's the Edgewood Country Club. This is up here is the site of the old Churchill Country Club with the greenway that runs through this area. We've got Royal Oaks development all along here on the other side of the C1 district. And we've got Beulah Road and the Greensburg Pike on either side of the C1 district. So hopefully that orients you. Everything north to the top. Planners are crazy about that kind of thing. Gotta have north to the top. So here's another map that shows you an aerial of the actual site. The purple outline, now you can start to see that there are two parcels. Here is one parcel within the C1 district, and then the much larger parcel of the C1 district. So the C1 district is comprised of a 133 acre and a 13 acre parcel. For those of you that haven't seen, this is kind of a fun thing. The campus planners back in the day decided that with the Westinghouse air brake business that was going and providing stuff for, I guess stuff's a technical term, huh? Stuff for locomotives, that they decided that it would be really cool if they would create their campus in the shape of a locomotive. So if you really squint your eyes and look at this map, you'll see the wheels of the locomotive, the cow catcher, the smokestack for the engine area for where the person is. So this is kind of a fun little bit of trivia for the history of the campus planning for this. So the main entrance, as you probably all know, is off of Beulah Road, coming in this way. And there is an access road off of Greensburg Pike this way that isn't used right now. I'd like to have you just take a look at the drainage patterns briefly before we move on. There's a large pond here, and then the drainage patterns that go down through here to the south through Wilkinsburg and eventually to Turtle Creek. Let's see, I think that's. So I mentioned public engagement, and I wanted to share with you a little more information about what we did. So we had a terrific steering committee. It was amazing. We were lucky, very lucky to have two council people. We had representatives from all neighborhoods and areas, and it was really a great steering committee, very thoughtful. They provided us input into what we needed to know about the community as we went through this visioning process. They acted as a sounding board to us as the consultant. They would hear things that we would suggest and give us feedback, and they acted as reviewers of the plan that we eventually submitted to council. So we were very fortunate to have a really strong steering committee to work with as part of that process. So they gave us a lot of information through their meetings and emails. We did a digital questionnaire. The steering committee thought it was important to reach out to the community, and this was a fairly easy way to do that, was to establish and develop a digital questionnaire that talked about questions related to your aspirations and goals for that large area along the parkway and any concerns you might have. So we developed a questionnaire fairly quickly, and in order to advertise that link to the questionnaire, we sent a postcard to every resident. Excuse me. So this is the front and back of the postcard, and it really had served two purposes. It gave you the link to the SurveyMonkey survey for you to do. They also advertised the 6 webinars that we were doing, and it indicated that if you wanted a paper copy of the questionnaire, that you would just contact the borough building, and they would make sure that you got a paper one if the digital process was just not your cup of tea. So we sent out the questionnaire cards in mid to maybe the third week of April. We closed the survey on June 6th. I need to make a note that we do a lot of questionnaires around the region, and this was a questionnaire that was not a statistically valid survey. What we were seeking was qualitative information and hopefully to identify any trends in terms of attitudes towards this property. Again, these aspirations and concerns that we might try to identify. So there were about 240 responses to that questionnaire. So when we got the responses back, and the report outlines all the answers to all the questions, but generally speaking, the preferred land uses were office, commercial development, and mixed use. Commercial development, for most people, that was retail commercial, and mixed use was retail commercial on the first floor and office or residential up on the second or third or fourth floor. Sustainable development came through fairly clearly. But I have to say, equally as important as sustainability was the important that the development get done. That there would be more tax revenue to the borough, that was really important. People kept mentioning that. And quite a few people brought up the need for good jobs. So those were the biggest areas of interest about their aspirations for the development of this site. The biggest concerns were traffic and environmental issues. We heard about pollution, concerns about stormwater and flooding downstream. But in terms of those kinds of things, that's generally what we got from the survey. We also identified some people. The steering committee shared with me names of residents or people who had property in Churchill, and we went through and contacted them by phone and interviewed those folks, and they gave us, they were very generous with their time. They spent a fair amount of time sharing with me what they hoped would happen for the development. All of them were familiar with what was going on with the C-1 district and had opinions, and they pretty much mirrored the opinions that came out in the questionnaire. Some were just interested in making sure we had development, and it didn't really matter what the development was, and then others that were very concerned about what the development would be and what it could be in terms of enhancing Churchill. So we got some very interesting perspectives from some of those. I would like to just mention that one of those interviewees was Gary Frederick from the Hillwood Company, and he shared with me his vision and aspirations for this site as well. So we included that in the report. So we had these webinars around certain topics that we thought might help articulate, because some people said, well, yeah, I don't know, I know what it is, but I don't know how to tell you what I want. And so we decided that we would have these webinars. And the purpose of these were to bring in regional experts on various topics and ask them to kind of brainstorm with us what those ideas were and those kinds of things. So we wanted to collect those experts' ideas on what maybe could and should happen in Churchill, what kinds of things we should consider, what kinds of things we should be talking about with the developers as they come in, and maybe what best practices there are, because many of these people were very familiar with national practices in terms of industrial development and could share some of their experiences with that. We thought the webinars enabled residents to learn more about redevelopment possibilities and constraints. We got pretty good response. The first one, they started to taper off. We must have had webinar OD on that towards the end, because we lost a few people, but people had an opportunity to really understand and listen to all the different aspects of what makes a great community and how does development contribute to a great community. It was one of our public engagements, and we worked with the COVID thing in terms of digital. So we had 6 webinars. Some of you were there for some, if not all. We kicked it off with Sense of Place, which tried to define what is community character and how can development enhance community character. We had connectivity, and we want to know how we could improve internal and external mobility. How can we build infrastructure for walking and biking, public transit, and those kinds of things? So we talked about how development could enhance that. We had the Living Infrastructure and Resource Conservation webinar, and we tried to talk a little bit about how we could identify and protect unique natural resources, natural resource systems. We were looking at systems, so there's not a whole lot on the site that was originally as natural in the sense that it had been developed by Westinghouse, but we have drainage systems and we have forest cover that affect things around the site, and so we wanted to talk about those systems, and certainly stormwater is a big deal in our part of the country in terms of flooding downstream. We talked about human well-being for one of the webinars, and this was a little bit about how could a contemporary workplace and lifestyle expectations and what is equitable access to safe and functional spaces, and what about active living and how do we get people outdoors? And so we had a really interesting discussion about well-being. The last two were kind of more nuts and bolts kinds of things. The last two webinars were, one was on design standards and forms. So really the question was, how do we get the built environment to help us achieve the goals set out in the other webinars? What are the tools that we can use to do that? And then we had a market webinar where we talked about what are the trends, and this was a significant reality check. I think the market webinar was a really important one to talk about trends, and certainly with COVID and everything, are people going to go back to office spaces? And will there be office demand? And how has COVID changed buying patterns? And will there be retail stores? So I thought that was a really interesting webinar in terms of a reality check for what might possibly be able to be developed in this site. I'm going to have to. We developed a vision. This is kind of a synthesis of all of the different public engagement inputs. It talks a little bit, the steering committee had a really wonderful way of kind of engaging us and trying to encourage us to include certain things, and we've highlighted some of the key areas. Now, we've got an interesting dilemma here, Alex, in that these pictures, there we go. Now I can read the vision. So I'd like to, I don't try to read the slides, but this is one slide that I do need to read. And so I'd like to share this with you and you read along with me. The first sentence says, the C-1 district is developed. So this is a vision. This is anticipating the future. The C-1 district is developed for productive uses that provide jobs, services, and tax revenue for the borough and Woodland Hills School District. So that's, if you were to kind of wanted the brief version, the C-1 district is to provide productive uses and provide jobs, services, and tax revenue. Then the vision goes on and talks a little bit about what that means in terms of other things that need to be factored in. So the rest of the vision says extraordinary measures. So we aren't thinking that it's just going to be meet minimum requirements, but there will be extraordinary measures to mitigate potential negative impacts on the borough and surrounding areas so that the environmental conditions are enhanced. So if flooding, for example, is not kept the same, but maybe even reduced through the development of this site. The development is widely seen as an asset to the community. That property values are elevated and not decreased because of the development, and that traffic continues within some reason to flow easily through and around the borough. So those are the kinds of things that we captured from all the different public engagements. So this is the vision statement. So this is where we started to go from here to say, how can we take that vision statement and turn it into something would be useful to apply to zoning regulations. And that's where we started to develop these interim steps, which are development objectives. And I'd like to go through each of the 6 development objectives that we developed as part of that were the webinars. We organized the development objectives along those webinar topics. So if you remember, the first one was sense of place, and we had all these different kinds of things that we were told were important to the community. And to give you an example of how this might work with zoning is if we take that leafy green residential neighborhood character, that might translate into some zoning regulations that might control tree cutting, or that might require tree replacement if trees have to be cut for development. So that's a very simple, practical way that this development objective can then be converted into a zoning regulation. The second one was connectivity. We talked about how we might do it, and so there might be some zoning ordinances that talk about buffer and what can happen in a buffer zone and what can't happen in a buffer zone, and do all of these kinds of things that help to support the infrastructure of connectivity. The third one is the living infrastructure and conservation of natural resources. And unlike some of the other ones, which are kind of hard to put your fingers around, this one tends to be fairly tangible, fairly specific, achieves net zero energy and water consumption. That can be measured. Captures, stores, or slowly releases 100% of the runoff. These are well above what our standard requirements. And so the question is whether we want to convert the standard requirements of our zoning regulation into these higher levels of requirement. So these are the kinds of things that evolved out of the living infrastructure and conservation of natural resources webinar. We had a very interesting discussion about human well-being. From the feedback that we got about that webinar and the information that we shared, we kind of focused on 2 things. And one is the environmental well-being of residents, and that is there pollution, is there noise, or those kinds of things. But there was also a separate kind of way of thinking of well-being, is that does the development provide interesting spaces for residents to enjoy? Is there a trail around the perimeter that people can enjoy? Is there a gathering space that people can do? And I just wanted to mention the use that, as I understand, is currently being proposed would probably not lend itself to public gathering spaces like an outdoor restaurant might, or a plaza in a cluster of retail commercial development. But that doesn't mean that it can't happen as part of the development. And I mean that by saying that maybe there's some place where these kinds of things can be done outside the parcel, the 133-acre parcel, that could be done and could be funded by the development. So I hope we don't limit ourselves. And I think some of the information the developer's been providing us is in fact doing exactly those kinds of things, of saying some things that we want to do for the community we do outside the actual site development. And so that might be a way of solving and meeting some of the development objectives for human well-being. These last 2, the design standards and forms development objectives, and the market one, are trying to set a tone. We wanted to see how we could create a zoning ordinance that ensures nearby residents' property won't go down in value. I think that's really important. And often in zoning, we deal with that with buffer requirements. And so as you have residential areas adjacent to commercial development, oftentimes you will have a prescribed buffer, a width of buffer, a density of planting buffer, other requirements. And maybe that's the kind of thing that we can start to make sure happens with any development that comes into this site, to make sure that those properties are in fact protected from any devaluing as a result of the development. And some sometimes there's some development that goals just kind of showplace things like the green roof on the right that are on some large industrial buildings that maybe we can trade off some things that we'd like to have but don't want to, but would love to have instead a green roof or geothermal energy, some not renewable resources as part of the development of this, which are added costs to the developer. And so maybe there's ways of working that out so that, again, the idea of the original comprehensive plan was that it was a collaborative approach with the developer and the community. So the last one was the economic or market-based things. How do we create zoning ordinances that ensure, oh, I'm sorry. So we talked about trends. I've mentioned this. Clearly, the objectives are that we want to generate some more tax revenue, that we want to create jobs, and the development needs to sustain home values. And we need to figure out, not all of those would necessarily end up in a zoning ordinance, but some may be with some thought to do that. I hope you've seen how public input has led to preferences for future development, which was adjusted by listening to our expert panelists, and then I think some reality was brought in, especially with that last market-based economic development webinar in terms of what future holds for development of large sites. So what's next? There are two things that the borough might want to consider. One is to adopt this vision plan as an amendment to the multi-municipal comprehensive plan. That would require, like any ordinance or comprehensive plan, to be submitted to the county for review, as well as the adjacent municipalities and the school district, and then voted on. So that would be one thing to really codify this vision. And the second is to make the zoning ordinances consistent with the vision you've developed here. And I would hope that would not be done in abstract, but would be done in collaboration with the developers that are talking about this site. So that would be the second. So I guess the question really is, so what and why do this? Why do these two steps after the vision plan has been approved? And we cannot regulate the positive aspects of development or mitigate the negative impacts without updates to the zoning ordinance. So you take your chances if you don't update the zoning ordinance, and that really is something the council has to decide where they want to go in terms of doing this and working with the current developer. So with that, I wondered if the council has any questions or comments for us.
So I will turn it over to my council people. If anybody has questions, I will listen to council and direct. Yes, Diane.
Yeah, I just want to thank Jim for the kind words and to let everyone know that working with Jim and Pashek and Elaine was a great experience. I think that the people who participated in the community very much appreciated your vision, you know, and we're very, very glad that we did this. There was some question about whether or not we should wait because of COVID, and frankly, I think that it went very well with the Zoom meeting. So I just wanted to say that. But I was involved in the process, so I'll sit back and let others ask their questions.
Thank you, Diane.
Adam, I see you unmuted, Adam.
No questions. I just want to say thanks for putting all this together. Very interesting, very thorough report. I just look forward to looking into it a little bit more here, and we'll move forward from there.
Thank you, Adam.
Just to comment on what Diane said, sorry, Kevin, what Diane said, you know, and a lot of us were involved with the meetings. There are a lot of hours put into the whole process by, as Jim said, professionals who had the vision to understand what we were looking for, and to sit down and put that all, to everyone collaborate together to come up with this plan that we have to be presented to the residents of the borough. So there was a lot of work involved with it, not something that was just thrown together haphazardly. So I appreciate all the efforts from everyone who was involved with it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kevin?
Hey, Jim, again, thank you. I echo what Diane and the mayor and Adam said. There's a lot of work for you, by yourself and by Elaine as well. I agree with you. The last segment, the market, to me was the most important and the most realistic. With all your experience, would you like to comment as to what type of facility you think would be useful in there? I hate to put you on the spot, but I'd like to know that if you have a thought on it.
Yeah, I should have brushed off my crystal ball. I have to say that my intuition, and it's Jim's intuition, is that there's going to be less demand for retail.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to potentially be less demand for office. There's only so many call centers. And I don't know. I don't know about housing. The problem with this site is that there's some significant infrastructure costs associated with getting it to the first step of actually building something. And oftentimes housing can't support that upfront cost. And so I'm not sure housing, as much as that appeals to me, I'm not sure housing in this site could do that. So I don't know. I don't know. I guess the smarter people than me will figure that out.
Well, thank you for that, Jim. I just want to add my 2 cents. But because of the pandemic and because of some of the things you just said, commercial real estate is in trouble, okay? And I don't think we should not listen to a warehouse distribution solution. So, and again, Jim, thank you very much. Okay.
I would say there's kind of 2 different questions being brought up there, so I'm going to leave Kevin, your last comment kind of off to the side a little bit, but I do.
I have a question.
Yes, Norma.
It seemed, and I came in late, and I'm sorry. I had a Zoom class. This
No worries.
evening. Yeah, so I've been Zooming all day. I had an office hour first, so I'm just thinking as I was listening to some of that there's some contradiction, or maybe some of those are not compatible with each other, or is that possibly not the case? I don't know. A tax, some facility that will bring in lots of revenue may not be compatible with preserving the cost of the housing, of the value of housing. I don't know. I mean, are those all reconcilable ideas or not? Goals? Do you see any contradictions there? Or?
So that's a really, really good question. That kind of goes to the crux of what we struggled with. Because there were a lot of people that would love to see a development that, I mean, single family housing with a little bit of corner stores and retail, and wouldn't that be a beautiful addition and fit in contextually to the borough? But it won't happen unless someone will come in and demolish all those buildings and clean up the site for free. And we know that probably isn't going to happen. And so, yes, there is a tension. You're exactly right, Norma. There was a tension between this desire, this kind of contextual desire. We want more Churchill on this site for development, but we can't really do it because of the barriers to infrastructure and those kinds of things. And that tension, I mean, the last meeting with the steering committee, they said, boy, Jim and Elaine, I don't know how you're going to do this, because there was that constant tension throughout this whole process. And I don't know that we came up with an exact answer. So I'm not answering your question.
That's all right. I just wanted, I mean, obviously you've been dealing with that, so.
Don?
I mean, I think Norma really raised the important point is, what are we willing to pay for? What are we willing to accept? We can put a nuclear waste dump there. We'll get a lot of money, but is that what we want?
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's the issue. And I mean, and we're kind of strapped because of the nature of the site, what's the mess that's there that we're left with. We're faced with changing landscape of retail business. We're left with, you know, the outcomes of the pandemic. So there are all these factors that are, you know, really working against kind of a sound, reasonable solution that would satisfy most of the residents and keep Churchill, the Churchill that people moved here for. You know, we're not Monroeville. We're not, you know, we're not Cranberry. We're Churchill. People move here for that reason. So, you know, there are a lot of factors that, you know, I think are unexpected and out of our control that are kind of leaning in one direction, but I ask the same question, what are we willing to pay for? I don't want a nuclear waste dump. I don't want something, and I use that as an extreme example, of course, but you know, I think that's where it comes down to, and that's why we're still here debating it, because it's not, with all these other factors, it's not, there is not a simple solution that really is apparent. There really isn't. We're going to have to make some sacrifice, either in tax revenue or quality of life. That's a choice you have to make, and that's what we're debating.
So I always allow our counsel to kind of comment before I make any comment too, or questions that I have. And I know that Diane has done the same, knowing that she has worked on the process even more so. So in the rare case, I'll comment before you, Jenny, real comment, because I don't want you to influence me, Diane. How's that for a new one? Having said that, so you know, Norma's question is my question, and maybe slightly more specific. You know, I think Kevin and Norma and Don, I think we all voiced the same challenge, and I recognize that your process, Jim, started kind of pre-pandemic, and then rolls into the pandemic, and it not only changed your process, but it also changed the landscape in which we're operating. So part of this, no matter what the thought of the committees that worked on it and the public that worked on it, they did so in a space where we had talked about, you know, grocery stores being anchors, and talked about, you know, new residential housing, and talked about, and yet now we sit in a different space. Could you talk a little bit about the shift, or the paradigm shift that takes place in your process, knowing kind of where we are in COVID, and understanding that none of us really know where we are in COVID? So, but if you could give me a sense of if that shifted the thinking of the process itself.
So let me see if I understand the question. So what I'm understanding is how did us entering a period of COVID alter our process?
Correct. So knowing that you started kind of got into
Right.
COVID, how did that landscape and the reality of the COVID landscape change, or did it alter kind of the thinking of what we're trying to do?
So the simple answer is that we went from public meetings face to face to digital meetings. But what I think you're trying to get at is, as we went into a period of COVID, are we changing the way our options for Churchill and for this site, are those options starting to shift and change as a result of COVID? And I think that's what the people in the last webinar were starting to say, that we may not be going back to the way it was in 2019. And I'm not an expert on those kinds of things, so you're really hearing it from me as a planner, but I believe that from what I see in the trends and what people are telling me, and what I'm reading is that in fact, things are going to change. There are going to be less offices and there are going to be less retail.
Any other questions from Councilor Diane, if you wanted to speak? So I think everyone's spoken, so take the floor. You have to unmute first. No one can hear the brilliant things you're saying while you're muted.
You might have wished that I kept myself muted.
Never.
No, I'll just speak very briefly. I think that what this boils down to is, you know, the COVID thing is very interesting, because I think we are going to see a lot of change. We just don't know yet how that's going to translate. Are we going to have a whole bunch of parents who now do not want to leave their children more than a mile away from them? And that has some impact on housing or where they live or work home spaces or any of that. That's all remains to be seen. What I know is that I'm glad we went through this process. It was very important to me that we hear from the members of our community. And the logical step beyond that is, I see my job as a council member as trying to provide as much information as I can to my constituents about the cost benefit of any decision. And that's broadly. And what we've heard from our citizens so far, the one response that we heard that I thought really told the story: I want any kind of development we can get yesterday to increase taxes, but whatever you do, don't approve anything that affects the pollution or the traffic. And that sums up, where we are. So I'm really thrilled that we did this, because now I think we have, at least I have, a clearer vision of what my responsibility is. And that is to try to sort all that out, and figure out what those costs and benefits are. So I'm grateful we did the process.
And I'm grateful that you all did as well. And quite frankly, I think your last comment is Norma's push and pull comment, right? Because I mean, what you effectively said, I think, is what we all want and what can't happen, which is we want all the development, right? Well, no matter what development it is. So let's say we had retail development. Let's say we had warehouse development, whatever development. We want all that development without people coming and going to it, because that increases traffic and pollution.
Right.
So it creates this kind of push and pull that, irrespective of what it is, that we have to sort how much push and how much pull. Yeah. But I think when we take the moment to step back and say, what is it that we're really talking about, right? Both, I think the key points of, and I can go through all of them, kind of the traffic, air pollution, noise pollution, light pollution, we can go through those as a whole. The key point is that there's, no matter what happens there, unless it turns into green space that people are not allowed to visit, there will be some. And then the what sum really is correlated to how much development. If we have a massive, bustling, everyone wants to go there space, right? Let's say it became a 133-acre amazing woodland area that people came to camp in every weekend, right? We would have, the more popular it became, the more traffic we would have. And so there's always going to be this kind of push and pull. And I think that, to your point, Diane, about our role, as council, it really is to balance the push and pull, because if on one side is, as Don said, the nuclear dump site that gives us, $5 trillion a year and we're Love Canal, and on the other side is a completely green space that is just for the animals, that provides no revenue, somewhere in between there is what we're supposed to figure out. And so I will say I appreciate all the citizens, yourself, the other council people, Mr. Pashek, and others in your effort to help us get there.
Just one more thing I want to add, and that is that with some of the things that Jim went over, those things that had to do with sense of space, or a sense of place rather, and the human impacts, in terms of looking at the costs and benefits, all of that nuance, is in there as well, and quality of life. So that, it's not, I hear what you're saying, the either or, and a lot in between, but there's a lot of issues in there that can be discussed, is the important point.
Yeah, without a doubt. And yeah. Again, one of the interesting points that and Jim, forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn. But I think one of the most interesting things in the push and pull of this entire thing is the conversation of it not being contained to sense of space or place or community benefit,
Right.
not being simply contained to that particular site. That
Yeah.
there's the possibilities for us to look more holistically at our community,
Right.
and say to ourselves, what's the plus and minus of the development here, regardless of type?
Mhm.
What's the plus and minus then if there are additional benefits in other spaces? What's the plus and minus if there's not those additional benefits, but a different kind of development?
Right.
So I think all of that is on our shoulders. The interesting thing that I will say for all of you who are listening today and as we go forward, this is the most monumental decision I think council will have to make in quite some time.
Oh yeah.
You know, and thinking back to when Westinghouse was an active site for employment, and the people bustling in and out and coming back and forth and all that comes along with that, whatever decision we make with respect to this site will have generational impact on Churchill.
Yeah.
And so no matter where you land, no matter what you think, the one thing I can tell you about all of your fellow Churchill residents and council people in particular, we will make this decision understanding the impact, and so that we all have a better Churchill. And no matter how that plays out, I can guarantee you that that will be what's on the mind of every single one of my fellow council people. I'm going to stop talking because I'll keep doing that forever. So I will turn it back if you have any closing comments, because it's 6:57, Jim, and we'll head towards our regular meeting. I see a shake of the head of a no. So we have just a couple seconds left, and then we're going to head into our regular workshop for council folks, and people are invited to jump on that meeting if they're interested. Alex, anything else that I'm missing? All I get is, I think it's a head shake.
No.
All right. Then at this time, there we go, 6:58. We got about a minute and a half, and we're going to move into our regular workshop meeting. People want to hang out and do that.
We have to resume, or are we already zoomed in?
I think we're staying here. Alex,
We're staying here. People are welcome to join us. This is a public virtual meeting space. We're still in the same spot, and it is a public meeting. And I've put the agenda up for your view. Obviously, this can be available online as well. And Mr. Chairman, I'll give it over to you for a call to order and to kick off the meeting.
Absolutely. And if people stay, it'll be the largest workshop meeting we've ever had attended. Nonetheless, let's call this to order at 7 sharp, and we can move ourselves forward. To begin with, as we do in workshop and business meetings, we do allow for public comment. And so what I'm going to have to do with the number on here, I'm going to need a little help probably managing this, if you do not mind, Mr. Manager. But we would open it to public comment. Essentially, public comment is for Churchill residents or taxpayers, and you will have the opportunity, if there is something that you want to speak on, having here at the borough, up to 3 minutes to speak. And so if you can if you click on the, so close up, the participants, you'll get the ability to raise your hand. That's probably the easiest way with the number that we have here. If you click on raise your hand, then we can call on you and make that happen for you. So if people follow me, I'm saying if you click on the participants, it will then give you kind of a list on the right. You can raise your hand. I see Ken has sorted what I said and raised his hand. So yes, Ken, the world is yours. If you want to unmute yourself, feel free, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you for everyone for the session here that just concluded. I think it's really helpful for everyone to see a summary of where you are.
Ken, real quick, if you can give your name and where you live again, sorry.
Yeah, okay. I'm Ken Balke. My wife Ruth Ann and I live on Hampstead Drive. in the Royal Oak plan of Churchill, and I also chair the tree committee for the borough. And my comments are to be associated with that. One thing, I just wanted to thank everyone for the session we just had. A lot of time and effort went in by many, many people to get there. And I think everybody understands a tough decision Borough Council faces with that. And that it ties in with the trees are part of that. I just wanted to mention for folks that may be on the line that there's an important session tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. We have a tree ordinance that was enacted last June of 2019. And there's going to be a proposed change to the ordinance that will be discussed and voted upon by council tomorrow relative to, my understanding is then advertise the change for a 60-day period until it will be approved. So it's informational for folks on the line. And the second is that I did notify the borough manager. I notified Alex last Friday of an incident. I think there were 2 trees cut down in a right-of-way last week, and have turned that in, and he is planning to take the appropriate action as necessary. So it's let you know that work's going on, and I'm continuing also to work with the school district on the climate action efforts. And there's a Tree Pittsburgh has just obtained a grant to plant 200 trees within the Woodland Hills School District. And next Monday, I'm going to be joining a team of people from Tree Pittsburgh visiting 5 different school sites, including the high school, which is in Churchill. And I've asked them to stop at the 2 properties that are public spaces for Churchill where we're looking possibly to plant trees, because that could become possibly the first sites where we could engage students in tree planting efforts. So I'll conclude there. Thank you.
As always, thank you for your comments, Ken. I greatly appreciate it, and appreciate the help you provide the borough. You know, can't say enough about it. Next up, I have David Branning.
Thanks. This is David Branning from 1130 Gilchrist Drive. Regarding the ordinance that Ken was talking about, could that be made available online that people could review rather than having to schedule a meeting or a time in the office? That's all I had.
Yeah. I don't see any issue with that. I assume that it can be posted up. Mr. Manager?
I'll have it up online really in a matter of minutes while we're doing the meeting. They'll need to go to our website, and they'll need to click through to the E-Code 360 environment, and they'll be able to see it there.
Outstanding.
Great, thank you.
That's the quickest response from the borough. Excellent new manager. I got management running like clockwork. Thank you, Alex. Moving on, I've got Borellis. I'm going to need you to unmute and feel free to speak. I see a raised hand for Tom Borellis. You there? I see you. I see you, sir. Just need you to unmute if you want to speak. Lee, you gonna help? Okay. Give me one quick second. I think she's gonna walk over and help with the muting process. If there's anybody else who has any questions while we are waiting, I won't take them out of line, but give a moment for help. Technology sometimes can be its own challenge. I have lived it myself, so I make no argument to that fact. So we just need you to unmute. There you go. You got it.
All right. Took a little work there.
Worth every second. No worries.
Tom Morellis, Jamestown Place, Blackridge section of Churchill. You know, I have to comment. I know Jim Pashek personally, and he's done a great job on what he's pulled together and the information you have. It's a shame that more of the community wasn't involved, but I think it's a beginning. Again, a shame that it wasn't done maybe 5 to 10 years ago. My only comment is out of the report that Jim's done, it seems to me that some changes to the zoning ordinance are obvious. You know, you can require zero runoff. You can require a carbon footprint plan. You can require alternative energy. You can require specific traffic plans that deal with all of the issues. And I think these are the things that are coming out of the Pashek report. And I think that a borough needs to take those into consideration as they look at the ordinance. Jim even mentioned that there's not specifics in the development, but the generalities of how you always develop. And I think these are the things that you need to seriously take a look at as you move forward. These changes to the ordinance will guarantee any development in the borough will be done properly and back to the 21st century. Again, thank you.
Thank you. And I think those are key points and one for us to take into consideration as we look to move forward. I saw a hand go up and then go down, so I don't know where they went. So I'll wait and see if they put their hand back up. There we go. I got that. Abe, floor is yours. I need you to unmute that. I can't quite hear you. You don't have sound coming. We're having a technical difficulty with you, Abe. We're not catching your sound.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely. You are live, sir.
Okay. My name's Abe Crowley. I live at 3 Lear Drive, or in the Stratford area. And I just wanted to point out that I've lived in Churchill over 15 years, and I've lived in Pittsburgh over 20 some odd years now. I've seen that Westinghouse facility just sit there vacant. And yes, we've had the movie production come and go out of there, but nothing real substantial there. And yes, people are worried about Amazon coming in with tons of trucks and everything, coming and going. I just wanted to point out that Amazon is moving to an all-electric fleet for all of their vehicles within the next 10 years. And I just think we all can hope and pray that, some other company comes in and buys that piece of property and goes, oh, I'm going to put, shops and restaurants on the bottom and apartments up above, and the people are going to have flying cars and come and go, and they're not going to impact us at all. Or we're going to add in biking trails, and these are going to be all bike people. We can hope and pray for all those things, but you're still looking at a piece of property that has a live Westinghouse facility that's still there. That's not going away. I don't think people would really want to live next to a place where radioactive material is brought into that facility for testing purposes, but at the same time, that radioactive material, I'm not worried about it. I live blocks away from it. Jay lives a little bit closer, but it's not gonna, we have the opportunity to sell the property, as a community to someone I think would be a very good steward of that property and put the money into it and put the, respect of the community, in there, and not just be one of those, hey, I moved in and I painted my house yellow or green or blue, and I don't really care about my neighbors. So, and I have no clue what's going on with my camera, why it keeps zooming in and out. It just seems like we've gotten blessed by the fact that Churchill Country Club is closed, and now we have a large green space. So yeah, it'd be great to have more green space. Even, you know, I'd love for it all to be green space, but I think at the same time we need to look for revenue coming into the borough to, you know, continue to increase the value of our houses and everything else.
Duly noted. I think it's fair to say that that is, you know, both part of the process of the prior meeting, along with, I think, the main considerations I said before that council will take with the utmost seriousness. You know, I'm trying to keep a neutral space, but I think realistically, all of us, every council person, you know, as I said before, irrespective of the direction that they take, will do so with the best interest of Churchill in mind. And I certainly understand your points and the changing kind of landscape that we're existing in with regard to the property. Next up, I've got Eric.
Hi, this is Eric Grotzinger. I'm in the Black Ridge section of Churchill. And Jay or Diane, could you address how toxic is the site, this Westinghouse site, and it is the development of the site? I mean, that seems to me a big hindrance of who can develop it. And will the Amazon site be remediated of that toxic waste?
And so to give the quickest answer, well, I can't talk to the specific nature of, for instance, the soil. To your point, Eric, I do know that development would require remediation. And so irrespective of who, especially if we're looking at some of the other kinds of development, but remediation would be part of that process. Am I missing anything, David, before I speak out of turn? I looked at the solicitor to make sure I don't say something that I'm totally not supposed to say.
No, that's correct. Whenever you have a property that has an environmental history, significant environmental history, you have to clean it up to DEP standards.
And so that it would be the expectation that any development that would have to come in would have to address that remediation, correct?
Yeah, and so that is
Correct,
a big concern about what we can do there and who is willing to foot that bill.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly, and again, I think the point is valid, Eric. I think it's something that we need to take into consideration. You know, who's willing to cover the cost of remediation in all of its kind of forms, including not just the soil itself, but the buildings and anything else that would have to be done. I think that is certainly part of the consideration of our conversation when we look at what is the kind of best direction to go. And we'll be talking a little bit about some of this in a minute as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This moves me on to Heidi.
Hi.
Hi, Heidi.
I'm Heidi Paluski. I live on Margaretta Street. And I really do appreciate all the work that went into the analysis of the C-1 area. But the thing that, and I haven't read it, so if it's in there, I apologize. Was there any talk about noise and noise ordinances? Because when you're talking about different uses, you have different noise profiles. So when you have something like an Amazon, you may very well have trucks coming in and out all times of the day and night. And it doesn't matter if they're electric. I mean, I live a block up off of Beulah and I can hear traffic and it's not the engines I'm hearing. So it's the tires on the pavement. And when you're talking about something that's like a mixed use, like commercial, retail, residential, you're talking about mostly like between, let's say 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. usage traffic. Maybe, you'll have some late night, people coming into their homes or whatever, but the noise is a different, as I said, a different time frame, and it's also a different, different rhythm. So there's definitely a consideration, especially like I live a mile away, so I probably won't hear it, but I might, but people who live closer, and especially those people on Beulah Road, they're gonna notice, trucks, and trucks make all kinds of noises besides engine. There's the, brakes and shocks and things like that as they go over bumps and potholes.
So I will say now that if the considerations that we really need to ensure are noise, air, light, not just soil or whatever kind of more typical forms of pollution. That is certainly part of the consideration for us in any development. I live less than a mile, far less than a mile. And so that is definitely on everyone's thought process. But again, I think, Heidi, the thing, irrespective of what direction, I'll keep myself in kind of a neutral place for this because there's a lot of process that has to go through this. We continue to be in the space of that push and pull. And no matter what the decision that we make, no matter what kind of decision or type of place we look at or type of development, we're always going to be in that, so how much for how much? And I don't mean financial, I mean the community, right? How much benefit to the community, how much cost to the community. And so that's taken into consideration, whether it is noise, whether it is air, whether it is, the remediation of the soil, the tax revenue, all of that is part of the kind of calculation that I think we need to make in looking at what's going to be kind of Churchill 20-ish forward, right? So it certainly is not something that has been lost on us. Is there any other questions from public comment today? I'm going to give a couple extra seconds because I know it takes people sometime a minute to, and again, if you click on participants, you'll see on the bottom you have the option to raise hand. If you click on that and I can see you're raising your hand, then I can call on you and let you know. And Barb, I think I saw you unmuting and then looking to go there. So you can just unmute because I'm assuming that you're going to raise your hand. And so I'll just go with that if you wanted to. And if not, you don't have to worry. If I don't see, I'll give it a couple extra seconds here. And if not, we've got some discussion items to get into. So let me see. All right, for my super large group, and again, so that people know, the greatest thing about Zoom is our area, when we used to hold these meetings, the most that we get is like maybe 8 to 10 people would be a packed meeting. So I'm excited by the outcome of giving people better access. Having said that, then I think we're going to move on past public comment. No, I don't see any other hands raised or anybody trying to get in touch, and move on to our discussion items in the agenda. First of all, just acknowledging that everyone was in receipt of the draft minutes for the draft minute meeting for the 3rd and for the 10th. So everybody, I assume, got those. Again, this is we're in the kind of council workshop space, so don't worry, the public, if you didn't receive those. Anybody see anything that was kind of out of order already that you want to discuss, or should we just move forward? All righty. So let's move on to kind of topic number 4 on list here, which is we need to, it looks like the scheduling, let's discuss it first anyway, for the public hearing in November, as you guys can read it, for the planning code for the Hillwood Development Text Amendment. So just kind of a quick open for discussion. What we're actually talking about here is not the passage of the amendment itself, but the advertising and scheduling of the public hearing in November, so that we're able to have this conversation about this particular text amendment as related to the Hillwood development. So,
Jay?
Yeah.
So, and Dave may want to chime in here. The developer did submit today a curative amendment, to the ordinance of Churchill, which kind of begins a process that we'll follow according to the municipality's planning code. So just stay tuned for that. Dave might have some more details related to that. So the language has changed a little bit from a text amendment, which is a suggestion that anybody could make to our ordinance.
Right.
Whereas a curative amendment is a formal process, again, spelled out in the municipality's planning code that we will follow. And so that packet was presented today to the borough, and we'll move forward from there. The timeline of November, just quite frankly, was anticipating the circulating of the language to the county and surrounding municipalities and the school district, those kinds of things for comment. But nonetheless, that's kind of where we're at. Dave, I don't know if you want to add anything to
Yeah,
that.
so yes, so from a procedural standpoint, since it's been submitted as a curative amendment, we would have to have the public hearing within 60 days of submission. So November still works, but it'd have to be November within 60 days of the submission.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine either way. I didn't anticipate it being longer than 60 days irrespective, you know, so I don't think that's an issue. And I understand the kind of the rationale and reasoning. So that's not an issue either. But so just for clarity, we will set a public hearing for it then. You know, my assumption would be that unless council has an issue, that we would do so at the kind of same timeline as we did now, kind of workshop, if that works for folks prior to the workshop.
So that date would be November 2nd. And for the public and for the borough itself, I'll work with Dave to find out what we can put online for there to review. I mentioned earlier related to the tree ordinance, the language for the tree ordinance is online for review, as will the text amendment language. So people will be able to see what it is the curative amendment actually says. You know, as much as we're able to put up online, we'll go ahead and do that, as well as meet the other criteria to circulate it.
Right. Yeah, there are advertising requirements for the public hearing, and there's also a requirement to submit the proposed amendment language to the county planning agency and also to our planning commission for review. So we'll do that as well. And I think Gavin has a plan tomorrow to go into more detail with the entire council on the nuts and bolts provisions of what the amendment is.
No problem. And it wouldn't have been a problem either way, whether done as curative or done as, I understand kind of process-wise.
Right. It's a simpler process either way.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, you know, either way works. And so we'll put that forward. We'll put it on the agenda for prior to the workshop. So you said that was the 2nd. So that works for me. And then obviously we'll have to run through the process for advertising and make sure everything is done in a timely manner.
Right.
All right. Any discussion from folks on this? So many people, it becomes harder to see. Council folks, if you've got something, now's your time. All right, I will take people's silence as acquiescence to the idea.
Hey, Jay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure, is this timeline consistent with what Hillwood is thinking, or are they thinking that something's going to happen in October? Do you know, Alex?
I can't say to whether it's consistent with. I can say that this is I think the timeline that we've set. I think it's a, you know, moving things forward. This is the timeline that can do that. You know, and I think that's ultimately where we're going to be at. You know, I think, you know, we're in a space that it gives enough time and enough turnaround that we can properly advertise it, make sure everything works. They understand the timeline on the curative, because, you know, I get their end, but from our end, it would have been on, you know, it would have been the same timeline whether it was the text amendment or not. I don't think we had any intention of pushing this back any further or delaying this any longer. I think we've, as I've talked with Diane, I think everybody, you know, we need to have a public hearing. We need to give the public an opportunity to speak out on this, on particularly this amendment, so that we can make a decision on moving it forward. And so I think that's what we're ultimately looking at, and this will get that done. So, we do have the CARES Act then. So what do we got? We're trying to have people give me money. Is that the story here, Alex?
Correct. Money has been distributed to Allegheny County, and the participating municipalities have an amount based on population. So please, if you haven't done the census, we ask that you complete your census form because it does matter. In fact, because Churchill Borough was slightly over a certain amount in its total population according to the 2010 census, we fell into a higher category than we would maybe if we were counted today, for example. So another plug for the census. So basically we're getting $80,000 and it's a reimbursement agreement, and it's for expenses that were incurred during this pandemic global crisis. We fulfilled the paperwork and in fact have already received our $80,000. So we're just trying to make sure all the paperwork is in line with the county, but they did approve our request. In fact, it's already into the general fund. The amount of 80,000 have been deposited. The county understands that. They knew that municipalities wouldn't have time to pass ordinances or resolutions quicker than maybe they could move to cut a check. But we're doing this, and tomorrow we'll approve it as a part of the agenda.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for your work on that. I know that you put some time and effort into that, and 80 grand is nothing to sneeze at. And if it is, somebody give me 80 grand. That's all I have to say about that. Anybody have any questions, discussion on that issue? It's money coming in, not going out. That's my discussion on that issue. So, speaking of in or out on the cash flow, we are looking to do a simple motion just to extend the current agreement with Vigliotti. My understanding is they didn't look to increase their cost or anything, and so just doing the extension was a quick and easy way. Is that correct, Alex?
That is correct.
Thank you.
I second that motion, Jay.
Well, someone's got to first it. I can't
Okay.
open the motion. So quick motion if you want to give it.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we extend the current contract with Vigliotti Landscape and Construction. Again, they're holding prices for the extension. So.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Don. Any discussion? Again, I think Kevin put in the key moment of discussion, which is that there's no cost change or increase. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And that's why it's called a simple motion. Thank you all for that. Anything we can do to keep costs down. Now on the less simple space is the MMO on the pension funds. I look to Kevin and cede the floor, sir.
Yeah, these are the obligations we have for the police pension and for the employee pension plan. I may note that they're less than this year's, so it's which is a good thing. So I think the pension plans are in good order. We'll need to speak with PNC soon or on a quarterly basis to make sure it's funded correctly. So I think we need a resolution, and I move that we resolve the resolution.
Tomorrow there'll be a resolution for voting on.
Okay. Being that it's a resolution, they'll have that up and ready for tomorrow, Kevin.
Yep.
So we'll definitely move that forward. You said it was a lower obligation this year.
It's lower than it's lower than this year for 2021.
Okay.
May I comment?
Of course you may.
Okay.
Vice President.
I just want, as long as we have this many people from the public, I think it's really important for people to know that many municipalities are in big trouble for underfunded plans for their employees. And, when I came on the council, I was very impressed with the fact that Churchill consistently and including to today we are in good shape in terms of meeting our obligations. And that's important for the public to know that.
No, I think it's a great point. In fact, I would argue that most of the communities suffer from pension legacy that really hurts them in ways that we are not suffering. And that is, you know, as much as you may hear us make excuses about problems, you know, and say, oh, maybe it happened over here. I wish they would have done this. You know, credit to those who came before us as well. I won't just put blame on those who came before us, and to you all as well, that we've kept ourselves financially solid, particularly with regard to our pension funds. And credit to Kevin for keeping us on the straight and true path as regards to this. So I appreciate all your work and your committee's work then. So that will be on resolution tomorrow. That brings us on to we've got the Church Arley project. So what do I got here with the 3 bids?
So as noted on the agenda, we did open up bids for the Arley project. This is to improve the traffic lights at William Penn Highway, Beulah Road, Greensburg Pike, and Lewin Lane / Fillmore Road, and Beulah Road, and Churchill Road. So this is a 100% grant. We applied for about $100,000, but as you can see, the bids came in less than that. And tomorrow, I would like the council to vote to award the bid to Traffic Systems and Services. They are the company who helps us with maintenance currently on our traffic lights. This one update the controllers so that the lights respond and function more efficiently.
Well, so tomorrow we'll put up as motion to award that bid to both the lowest bidder along with someone that we know their work product and that we've worked with them. So that's a great combination of things.
And if you ever got a traffic light in Philadelphia and paid for it, you help contribute to this program, because only in the city of Philadelphia do they have the automated red light program. And they're kind enough to share with us the revenue from those traffic tickets throughout the Commonwealth. So just so you know where that money comes from, it's from the city of Philadelphia traffic scofflaws.
So to be clear, we get the lights fixed or improved. We don't pay for it, and it comes out of traffic tickets that none of us got. I'm a fan. Let me just say that now. I am wholly a fan. Thank you, Philly. You got what you deserved. We appreciate what you're giving us.
Be careful when you drive in the city of Philadelphia, because they do use cameras to enforce automated signals.
They do use cameras, and they lost a football game. So find your wins where you can. That's what I say. Okay, any discussion on this? Seems pretty cut and dry there. Happy-go-lucky. Moves us on to, we heard the conversation coming into this about the tree ordinance. More to the tree ordinance. Vice President Law, would you like to comment on the tree ordinance?
Yes. The tree committee did a tremendous amount of research, about what the ordinances were in other municipalities, and what the language was and what was allowed. And I think that we had mentioned at some point to the council that on the one end is Fox Chapel Borough, which has very strict rules for every single tree in Fox Chapel, private and public. Right away, private property. So our borough is just starting into this process. But one of the things, at this point, our ordinances only cover trees that are in the right of ways. But what we're finding is that people are getting disreputable tree service companies who are coming in and literally lopping off the top of a tree, which creates not only something that's unsightly, but it kills the tree and creates very dangerous, potential for very dangerous limb situations and the falling of trees. So this ordinance deals with practices that would prevent that from happening. And again, this only applies to trees that are in the public right of way.
And I would just follow that comment by saying that not only is it a harmful practice in the right of way, which we don't want, but quite frankly, as the owner of two 80-foot oak trees in the front of my house, it is a harmful practice that you don't want for your own trees, no matter where they are. Because the last thing you want is to have a reputable kind of tree service come in. And they've come by my house before. people who, you know, they're not following, you know, our guide, you know, their obligation as a solicitor, you know, solicitation, they're not following it. So this is certainly something that is well needed, and I certainly fully support it.
I just add to, oh, go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just want to add the fact that, you know, and I wanted to say this earlier in our other meeting, so much information is available on our website. And with respect to this issue, there is Ken Balke's presentation, his slide presentation about tree canopy and the problem that's happening here in Churchill and Allegheny County. I just encourage everyone to access that information on the website and read it so that you know the big picture behind what we're talking about.
Duly noted, and a very good point. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Is there any other discussion on this matter? Again, we'll take this up as a formal vote tomorrow. Alrighty. Then it brings me to number 10. I am sad to announce what we know. Is that our fellow council person, Diana Yankis, has had to tender her resignation due to some family issues. We, you know, I will just take a second before you know, looking to, and I don't even know the emotion wise on this, but you know, anytime the people who have invested their time and energy with us, they become part of this kind of community and family of our folks on council. I do not take any, it is difficult to see our folks have to step down. They're very difficult to replace. She brought a different perspective, and I know that she is doing this to take care of her family, and that's important. But we miss her, and we will miss her presence on council. I think this is, you know, we can do this now. It doesn't matter. It's pretty simple. You know, if somebody wants to make the motion to accept, so we can just get through that, then we can have any discussion we want and then close it out.
Okay, I move to accept person Diane J. Yankis's resignation from the Churchill Borough Council.
Second.
Any discussion on this matter other than that, you know, it's not the highlight. All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and I know some have reached out, but we, you know, wish your family the best, and we'll move forward. We're now on to the next step, which is discussing my daughter Hannah and filling the vacancy, which is the other side of this. Give me a quick second, buddy. This is part of the COVID space, right?
We're getting a puppy tomorrow.
And we are getting a puppy tomorrow. The comment. But so, if you know, the other thing I would just kind of let the public know, and I'm glad we have a kind of large group today. You know, there is an opening on council, and if you would like to help the borough, please feel free to submit your resume. I'm sure that'll be posted on online, and we would love to have you here. It's a great ways to help out the community, and we certainly are in need. And speaking of helping out the community, I'll just jump from one to the next, unless people have any comment on filling vacancy. Yes, Kevin.
Yeah, I just want to add, I want to make sure that the residents know that this is open to anybody that's a resident, obviously age and whatnot, but you don't have to be of a certain party or whatever. It's
only thing that you have to be is been here for a year.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
That is the consideration. Process-wise for this, you know, quite frankly, the council will interview and make a determination on who we want, and then at that point, whoever is selected would have to run in the next election that comes up. So generally within 2 years, this is how that ends up working out.
I just wanted to correct any misconception that you had to be part of the party that Diana Yankees was. So
Yeah, you can be, any party, no party, that's all over here. And the real question is, do you have Churchill's best interest in mind? And if that's what you got, we've got a seat at the table. That's how we're looking. And to that end, I would also just kind of update on the Human Relations Commission that we have received 7. Am I correct, Alex?
It's been there's been 2 additional since Friday, so it's up to 9 right now.
So we're gonna start setting up interview, and once we do that, we're gonna get these slots filled, and then we'll follow that up with the training. Working with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission to provide training for them, and then that commission will get going. And honestly, it will be a great thing, both in having it as a message, but also in addressing some of the issues that we know have happened here in Churchill. Both, neighbor to neighbor things, but also, quite frankly, as we look at things like employment and other issues, that having a commission like this will be great. Likewise, we're waiting on a response right now. The police committee from the ACLU to provide some additional information so that we can move forward with the policy changes we talked about before. I know it's on the agenda, but wanted to make sure that was brought up as well. I'm going to slide down here. I'm looking at mine versus yours. So we'll go around and deal with any council or manager reports, anything that council wanted to report in on, specific reports that you want to discuss openly. Is there anything on the board from council members?
I just want to add, Jay, there's a lot of good information in the binder, and some of the financial stuff we're now getting from Krista and Alex is terrific. So take a good look at it. I want to commend Krista for her work on the financial side of it. So, the audit is available. The audit for 2019. There's hard copies. If you want it mailed to you, that can be done. So.
Excellent. Any other reporting out there? I would say the addition to, Kevin, to your point, the addition both of our of the change in staff and combined with bookminders has been a significant change in the amount and type of reporting that we're receiving. So I would agree. Any other comments reporting out from council? I think I've a couple things on my own, but I'll wait and see if anybody else has anything.
If I can just ask, Kevin and Alex, where are we on the GROW grant? Oops.
So the GROW grant has been submitted, and I don't think Kevin nor Dennis or I have had any update other than it's been received. I know we also had an endangered species survey being conducted, and we had some paperwork to fill out with Penn Hills related to the Collins Road pump station.
Okay.
And I don't know, Dennis, if you're still here from Gateway Engineering, if you have any thought of when the GROW grant announcements could take place?
GROW grant announcements should be expected by the end of October. Typically it's the end of September. So this year they've pushed everything back a month due to COVID. So I would expect it at the end of October. Okay. And then the species analysis with the snake, that is expected to be completed with a report by the end of October so that all the remaining permits can be applied for. And I was going to bring up too, I don't know if Alex, if you had that in there about the small water and sewer grant and the award announcement by DCED for that.
Yeah, go ahead. You can explain to. I know we're trying to chase signatures down. So that we
Yeah,
can execute documents.
was announced that the borough did receive $400,000 towards that project with a small water and sewer grant. That's a big step towards that project.
I've heard a rumor.
Yeah.
I've heard a rumor of such funding being made available.
That was good work by Jay and his contacts with Senator Costa. Thank you.
Thank heaven.
And all of you, are you kidding? Come on. Okay, I think I turn in unless anyone else has anything else to report. Alex, anything coming out the manager's report today?
I think just the critical thing is really our willingness to work with the council members to make these reports available to you through Office 365 in the Teams environment. And we'll do whatever it takes, because the reports aren't any good if you're not able to see them and get them in a timely fashion. And we only have room for improvement in all of those, and the quality of the report as well as the timeliness of the report. So if you bear with us patiently and help us help you access the reports through the systems we've invested in, you'll hopefully find that rewarding and make things a little better as we move forward.
Yeah, I would just follow saying that if you pull up Teams and you're on it throughout the day and you're trying to get a hold of me, that's probably the best way. I have 3 different teams that are up all day during my workday. I think I'm the only person that I know that has a Teams account for a org, a com, and a gov. So council people, it's hard as I can be to get a hold of. Here's a much easier way to do that. So also you can just call on it, so you can always just ring me right up, and it'll just ring on my computer while I'm sitting here, and I can answer it right away. So if you have access, it's a great way to do it. I can share files on it. We can share screens like we do here, and it works really good in kind of small environments. So committee environments, it's optimal for. Not as great when we do kind of these kind of large things, because it only gives you right now a 3x3, which means nine. It gives you Brady Bunch exactly. So you can play the Brady Bunch, but once you get past that, you're off screen. So, but it's great if you're doing 9 or less. It's great for us, and I really encourage everyone to move to it. I appreciate Alex and Krista, your work to help folks get there. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. Anything else, Alex, on your end? All right. Well, I'm looking at the agenda, and I believe the agenda says adjourn to executive session. So at this time, we are going to adjourn to an executive session. If I believe it is both kind of combo personnel, legal. And so I will bid adieu to all of my fellow Churchill folks, except for my council folks. We're going to have to hang around for a minute. So thank everybody. Have a wonderful week. And Alex, you're going to have to clear it out and lock us, or we're going to have to move.
Good seeing everybody. Bye.
Yes.
Run away while you can. My advice to you is run away while you can.
But we still need some participants to leave.
Yeah, you can exit them if they don't, and then at that point you can lock it. So you're gonna have to bounce out 4 more, 3 more. And then you should be able to lock the room.
Yeah, I'll do that next. Make sure I got everybody out that we need.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, the meeting is locked.
All right. Welcome
And
to
then one more moment, please.
What's up?
I'm just going to stop screen sharing.
Yes.
Then I'm going to stop now the recording. So the recording has stopped.